Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story. Can you guess how it ends? The second I rolled up to the Oak Ridge Grand Hotel that doomed night, a thick, uneasy vibe crashed over me, heavy as a storm cloud ready to burst. I'd been busting my tail for days getting ready for this shindig, picking out my sharpest suit, running through imaginary chats I'd have with Emily's folks, all banking on the slim chance this evening might patch up the quiet cracks that had been splitting my marriage apart for way too long. I'm Jake Thompson, by the way, and for 3 solid years, I was dead sure that love, trust, and a little mutual respect were the bedrock of what I had with her. I'd even snagged some time off work, fussing over every little detail, till I was convinced I was looking top-notch. But as I strolled up to the reception desk, this gut punch hit me: things were never gonna be the same again. So, the lady at the desk grabs my name, squints at me like I'm a puzzle she can't figure out, and starts flipping through the guest list with this slow, careful vibe. Then she drops this icy bombshell: "Sorry, buddy, but you're not on here." Right then, it's like the floor just vanished under my boots, pure shock and disbelief slugging it out in my chest. Was this some dumb mix-up, or had they flat-out scrubbed me off on purpose? I spin around to Emily, praying I'd catch some kind of answer in her eyes, but there she is, cozying up next to her mom, Linda, wearing this smug little smirk mixed with a sneer, not a shred of sorry on her face. Her voice cuts through loud and clear: "What, you seriously thought you'd get an invite? We don't let strangers in." Those words slam into me like a freight train, each one tearing apart the trust I'd been clinging to for years, stitch by stitch. My heart's throbbing with this messy stew of shame and a soft, sad ache, but even though a spark of rage flickers inside, I don't let it take the wheel. I plaster on a steady grin and mutter back, real quiet, "Guess I'll head out like a stranger then." It's got this heavy, done deal ring to it I didn't plan on, but there's no dodging it now. With every slow step I take out of that fancy hall, the burn of betrayal mixes with this tiny seed of grit starting to grow. Each move I make screams the brutal fact that the woman I'd poured my heart into wasn't the one I used to look up to anymore. I cross out into the chilly night, city lights shimmering across my damp cheeks, tears I didn't even notice till now, and this weird sense of freedom starts blooming through the hurt. It hits me that getting ditched, as rough as it stings, might just be my first real shot at clawing back some pride I'd lost along the way. That rejection. It wasn't just getting bounced from some wedding list, it was like they'd stamped "unworthy" across my forehead in the eyes of people I used to call my crew. Every thud of my shoes on the concrete rings with this sour twist. I showed up ready to toast to togetherness, and I'm walking away stuck in the lonely quiet of a nobody. The crisp night breeze brushes my face as I drift down empty streets, my head spinning with flashbacks to better days, times when promises meant something and love felt real. Out there in that hushed dark, the pain starts shifting into this rock-solid willpower. I'm starting to get it. Sometimes the nastiest cuts are what push you into the toughest comebacks. Getting shut out in front of everybody like that. It's flipped a switch, a hard goodbye to a life stuffed with fake smiles and being ignored. I know the road ahead's gonna be a slog, but as I keep trekking solo under those cold, careless stars, a little flicker of hope lights up inside me. They'd stab me in the back, drag me through the mud, and kick me out like some random drifter, but right there, I find this tough-as-nails strength promising me a tomorrow free of their phony love. Every gulp of that sharp night air tells me I'm still here, still got the reins to my own fate. That darkness hanging around. It's not some gloomy blanket anymore, it's a blank slate I can splash with a fresh start, where what I'm worth doesn't hinge on their nods but on the guts I've dug up deep down. So, with a heart that's weighed down but still got some fight in it, I ditch the echoes of that rotten night, stepping into a foggy future with this rock-hard belief that sometimes the ugliest farewells are the only way to kick off something real. I stumble out into the freezing night, the cold smacking my face as I yank at my tie, fumbling to pull myself together even just a little. My head's oddly calm, no raging or moping, just this clear, steady vibe slicing through the mess. It dawns on me then, this whole thing was rigged. That gut punch of a brush-off wasn't some fluke. It was a slick, planned move by Emily and her mom, Linda. I feel like they'd straight up deleted me from their world, scratched me out like a name they didn't want on their list, and that sting of disgrace cuts so deep it's like ice in my veins. But way down inside, there's this stubborn spark I didn't even know I had, a drive to snatch back my self-respect, even if it means tossing my comfort out the window. I hop into my car, not even glancing back at the hotel's glowing front, and peel off into the still night, my brain buzzing faster than the city lights streaking by. It's a long, quiet haul, the tires humming on the road are the only noise keeping my jumbled thoughts company. I don't swing toward home, 'cause going back there would just mean slipping into a life where I'm barely a blip and my hurt doesn't count. Instead, I point the wheel toward this little tucked-away cafe downtown, a spot that's always been my hideout when things get bleak. I pull into a shadowy corner of the lot and just sit there for a sec, letting the cool air tangle with the leftover heat of all these mixed-up feelings. I think back to all those times I let Emily's little jabs and brushed-off comments slide, hoping love would iron out the wrinkles eventually. But that night, there's no dodging it, I'd been nothing but a nuisance, a shadow in my own damn marriage. My shaky hands fish out my phone, and I punch in a number I've had locked in my head forever, one tied to somebody who's always seen my value. I make that call slow and careful, not begging for a lifeline, but laying down a quiet line in the sand that their meanness isn't gonna write my story. The ring echoes through the dead quiet parking lot, and this odd peace washes over me. I start piecing together how, over these last few months, the clues have been piling up like shards of a smashed mirror, Emily's far-off looks, her short, snippy answers, the way her eyes went blank when I needed a little warmth, and Linda's fake, plotted-out grins. All of it was screaming I'd turned into dead weight. Sitting there alone, I latch onto this sharp realization, if they want to play me like some outsider, I'm gonna carve out a trail that makes damn sure they remember who I am. My head spinning with ideas and schemes I'd shoved down for too long, all in the name of keeping the peace. That cafe's neon sign blinks off in the distance as I gear up to climb out, and with every step away from the car, I peel off more of the old me, the guy who bought into the fairy tale of love that doesn't quit. I ain't that dude anymore, hanging back in the shadows, quietly begging for a scrap of care or a nod. Now, I'm a guy who knows what he's worth, ready to stand on his own 2 feet if that's what it takes. Every move I make is pushing me toward a tomorrow where I don't get shrunk down by folks who swore they had my back. That cold air. It's like a wake-up call, washing away the old aches and pumping me full of this new, fierce drive. In that short, hushed breather before the storm of truth and payback hits, I make up my mind to let M know I'm still here, steady and tough as nails. I'm gonna show M disrespect doesn't wipe out who I am. This quiet before the chaos ain't me giving up, it's me loading up on strength, rounding up my thoughts and memories, all proof of the life I've scratched out and the future I'm damn well gonna take back. My heart's locked in, toughening up like frost on a frozen lake, and I step out into that chilly dark, ready to scratch out the next part of my tale my way. Every word I'll spit, every stride I'll take, it's all gonna yell loud and clear that nobody's shoving me into the background, and even in the stillest moments, my voice has got enough juice to rattle the bones of the ones who tried to shut me up. The wedding kicked off inside that big, fancy hall, and I couldn't help but soak up every little thing with this weird mix of sourness and curiosity tugging at me. I hung back near the end, tucked away in the shadows of those fancy carved pillars and the dim, dancing candlelight, eyeing the whole scene as it played out like some polished stage show. Emily was parked up front next to her mom, Linda, her face locked tight like a vault, giving away none of the cold-hearted stuff I'd gotten used to from her. Over on the other side, Sarah glided down the aisle in this stunning white dress that grabbed every flicker of light with her smooth steps, supposed to be this picture-perfect moment of grace and promise, but all it did was leave me with this icy, far-off determination. My head was a mess, swirling with old shame and this slow-burn feeling that payback was finally creeping up, like every tiny bit of this setup was heading straight for a crash. Then, bam, right on time, a bunch of shrill phone rings ripped through the soft vibe like a knife. It started with one stubborn little ding, then another jumped in quick, and before you knew it, the whole place was buzzing with phones going off one after another. I caught Linda's face going pale as she peeked down at her screen, that cool mask of hers twisting into pure panic and worry. In a flash, I saw Emily's cocky little grin vanish. She snatched her phone up, eyes popping wide at whatever popped up, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The noise swelled, blending with these nervous mumbles from folks swapping shaky looks. All that pristine decor and gentle tunes got swallowed up by this thick cloud of chaos and fear, like some dirty secret too big to bury had just torched the room. Every buzzing phone hit me like a loud wake-up call to the stuff I'd been guessing at forever, proof that all their slick lies were falling apart right then and there. Watching their picture-perfect party start to crumble, I felt this dark kind of thrill tangled up with a heavy sadness. The groom, Mike, had worry carved all over his face. He shot Sarah this look, a quiet, "What's going on?" that just sat there, heavy as the tension choking everybody in the place. I was glued to it all, my pulse hammering with every ring, every hushed word bouncing through the crowd like waves picking up steam. Right then, you couldn't miss the twisted joke. Those gadgets we all lean on were tearing open the ugly splits in a family that loved to brag about being flawless. I flashed back to that sharp sting of getting shut out, that day they tossed me aside like some nobody, and now, seeing it all play out, every chime and startled whisper felt like an echo of that old hurt. This wasn't some random glitch, it was a dead-on hit, timed just right to drag every buried truth into the spotlight. I could feel their fake fronts cracking as stunned looks took over their rehearsed grins, and the soft chatter got drowned out by this growing roar of freaked-out whispers. That grand hall. It turned into nothing but a stage for this mess of backstabbing and exposure, every pair of eyes glinting with the chance something big was about to drop. Time dragged on, stretching seconds into forever, and the air got thick with this heavy sense of what was coming next. I figured out this wasn't just some tech hiccup or bad luck, it was the big flip, the moment I'd been waiting on to settle the score. Every tick of the clock screamed that their slick little show was collapsing under the weight of raw truth. This fresh fire lit up inside me, steady and stubborn. I wasn't about to let them wipe out my pride without me leaving a dent. The lights up top seemed weaker now, their shine too feeble to cover up the real, messy feelings ripping through the crowd. I knew this night, all dressed up in fake cheer, was turning into a game-changer, a raw reveal of what they'd been hiding. In that loaded quiet between the ringing and the shocked mutters, I held tight to this rock-solid feeling that everything was about to flip upside down. The wedding's pretty shell was splitting open, showing all the ugly truth underneath, and me, Jake Thompson, I was dead set on making sure none of it faded away. Every shake, every jumpy glance, every dip in the quiet talk, it all proved how strong truth could be, a force that, once it broke loose, would ring out way past these fancy, falling apart walls and into whatever's next for all of us. I plopped down by myself in this little park corner near the hotel, the chilly night air wrapping me up like a blanket while I ran back through how it all went down. Earlier that evening, I'd fired off this message, put together real careful, meant for every single soul at that wedding. I'd dumped every jab, every put down, every low blow I'd taken into it, laying out stuff Linda and Emily had kept locked away for years. I could still feel how steady my hands were, tapping out every cutting word, every snotty dig, every time they made me feel like less than nothing. That note wasn't just me venting, it was me dropping the hammer, a shake-up meant to rattle the core of the family that had kicked me to the curb without a second thought. I could picture my phone screen glowing as I hit send, knowing those words were about to blow up their perfect little front. Now, sitting out here in the dead quiet, I kept replaying the madness in my head. I saw how folks huddled around their phones, eyes bugging out as they swiped through the jaw-dropping stuff I'd let loose. Linda's face went white with this mix of rage and dread, and I could still see Emily's eyes darting around, hunting for a way out from the truth staring everybody down. The hall's vibe flipped from high-class party to this choked-up panic, all whispers and blame flying around. Every ping, every wave of shock rolling through the crowd, it backed up what I'd been thinking all along. Their shiny lies were busting wide open, right there in the moment. I kept chewing on that message, those screenshots of nasty texts where Linda called me a screw-up and Emily flat out said she was done faking it with me. Stuff they'd stashed away in private chats now blazed like warning lights smack in the middle of their big wedding. Watching it all hit the fan, I didn't feel any big win, just this odd combo of "told you so" and a deep, heavy ache. I was right, the truth couldn't stay caged, but it also proved what I'd been scared of, that I'd just been a side note in a life I thought was mine too. Out there in the park, I caught this faint buzz of voices drifting over from the hotel, a low rumble of regret and confusion. I could just see it, the scramble behind those doors, family hashing it out in a frenzy, rushing to patch up their image, grasping at straws to spin the story. Too late, though, the wreck was done, and every fake front they'd built was crashing down under truth's heavy fist. I thought back to how I must have looked that day, swallowing a fate I didn't pick, all quiet and betrayed. But right then, with just the breeze and rustling leaves keeping me company, this tough little spark started kicking up inside me. It clicked for me that this wasn't just about peeling the masks off the people who'd made my life hell, it was the start of me breaking free. That shame I'd been lugging around. I was done hauling it, I'd turn it into this steady fire to grab back the respect and pride they'd ripped away from me. I got that tearing all this apart was gonna hurt everybody caught up in it, but it felt like a must-do cleanup, a way to scrape off the fake crap under the harsh glare of what's real. Even the ones who'd sneered down at me were gonna have to deal with the fallout of their mean streaks. I kept replaying those times I just swallowed their scorn without a word, Emily's snippy tone whenever she bothered to talk to me, Linda's stuck-up looks, and that quiet vibe they gave off like I didn't even matter. Now that all those moments were out there for everybody to gawk at, I got this mixed-up feeling of finally being done with it all, sweet and sour at the same time. It was like somebody yanked the last string of their lies, and the whole mess of our history was coming undone right in front of me. My heart was thumping solid as I owned up to it. This was my shot to stop letting their games decide who I am. Every gulp of that chilly night air sharpened my headspace. The ugly truth, blasted out for the world to see, was the kick I needed to shake things up. I knew the path stretching out ahead was gonna be rough, and the mess from that night would ripple way past that swanky hall's walls. But I also knew I'd finally cut loose from the ropes of their fake nice and nasty ways. I shut my eyes, letting the cool breeze fill me up, taking in the heaviness of what got uncovered and the hope of what's next. Under that calm, moonlit sky, I made a quiet promise to myself, to build a life where my value didn't come from their shallow takes but from the real-deal strength and guts I knew I had. I stuck around there long after the chatter and glow died down, hanging on to this idea that even when everything's a wreck, truth's got this muscle to set you loose. Every busted dream, every secret they couldn't hush up anymore, it all cleared the ground for a fresh start, one where I wasn't just some punching bag for their cold shoulders but a guy taking his story back. I can still see it like it's etched in rock, that second Sarah's face flipped from cool and unsure to pure, blazing mad. I was keeping my distance, watching the madness in that wedding hall hit its peak. The buzz of whispering guests and wild phone pings had barely chilled out when Sarah's phone started shaking like crazy in her grip. Those soft, warm eyes of hers turned into something fierce I'd never clocked before. I could practically feel the jolt rolling off her as she swiped through the brutal texts I'd sent, the ones laying bare every harsh word and cheap shot Linda and Emily had slung at me like it was nothing. Right then, as she took in the hard proof of how little they cared, Sarah changed up fast. Her jaw locked tight, hands balling up like she was gearing for a fight she couldn't dodge. The room was thick with stunned vibes and sadness, but man, that was nothing next to the raw fury pouring out of her. The quiet that dropped over the hall got smashed by her shaky voice, loud with hurt and rage. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" she threw out, her words dripping with years of buried pain and a sudden hunger to make somebody answer for it. I had this weird mashup of about time and a little pity watching Linda, always so put together, stumble under Sarah's hard stare. Emily, who'd kept up that frosty, untouchable act forever, looked like she'd been stripped bare, her face twisting with shock and a hint of sorry. It all went down like slow-mo, Sarah's eyes scanning the crowd, daring anybody to step up. Every hushed word, sneaky look, and fading grin just piled onto how huge her letdown was. I could tell the guests, who'd bought into that perfect family bit, were starting to wonder what this crew was really made of. You could almost touch the strain as Sarah marched off the altar, steps locked in purpose. She chucked her bouquet down hard, those soft petals flying everywhere like bits of promises that didn't hold up. One last bold look at her mom, and she bolted out of the hall, leaving this stunned Hush and a heap of regret in her wake. I just stood there, stuck between my own busted-up pride and this family falling apart right in front of me. Every bit of it, Sarah's shaky voice, Linda's frantic eyes, even Emily's quiet give-up, backed up what I'd figured all along: their shiny little world was breaking into pieces they couldn't fix. That second, I got this bittersweet rush, not mean-spirited, just relief that the truth I'd waited on was finally out there. Sarah's blow-up felt like it snapped her loose from a life full of control games and not caring, and in a way, it cut me free from years of eating their crap in silence. Watching her storm off, some of that old weight eased off my back. I knew this was it, the end of fake grins and hollow words, no going back. Her big stand-up moment rang out my own freedom. I wasn't gonna be the shadow guy in a wrecked marriage anymore or let their harshness tell me who I am. Sarah's fire didn't just crack the surface of that one wedding, it tore down the whole shaky setup of a life propped up on lies and neglect. As the grumbles got louder in that big hall, I made a quiet deal with myself: out of their sneaky ashes, I'd build something real, a future where respect and pride weren't just handouts they felt like giving. That day's chaos was wilder than anything I'd ever seen. Deep down, I'd always known that wedding was a stack of lies and show, but I never pictured it blowing up so loud and public like that. The minute Sarah stormed out, her voice bouncing off the walls with real, raw anger, the whole game changed. I was off to the side in the crowd, tucked behind some pricey pillars and shiny chandeliers, watching their perfect front crumble right there. Mike, the groom, was scrambling after Sarah, panic and disbelief all over his face, yelling for her to hold up, but the guests muttering just swallowed his voice, everybody's eyes jumping from phone to phone, sucking up every juicy bit of the mess unfolding. Deep down, I got this little spark of satisfaction, like a quiet win I could barely feel after years of being shoved aside, a shadow in a family obsessed with looking perfect. All those hushed talks and soft jabs floating around me just backed up what I'd always figured: their shiny little world was propped up on nothing but mean vibes and neglect. I thought back to those endless nights stuck in quiet misery, scratching my head over why I always ended up invisible while everybody else soaked up the glow of being loved. Watching this disaster unfold now, I was hit with a jumble of feelings: sadness for the pretty dream that was gone, a big sigh of relief that the real stuff was out, and this solid drive to take back my pride. The chatter around me got rowdier as folks started going at each other, their stunned faces turning into heated arguments about how something this rotten could sneak into what was supposed to be all about love and togetherness. Mike's dad, James Kingston, showed up right in the thick of it, his big presence pulling every eye as he laid into Linda with this no-nonsense tone, her face frozen in fear and regret. "I'm not letting my boy get tangled in this garbage," he barked, his voice steady and sharp, cutting through the hall and hitting everybody who'd bought into the wedding's holy vibe. Susan, Mike's mom, stood there quiet by his side, arms folded, her eyes scanning the mess with this deep, let-down look. Their stepping in, too late to fix the wrecked night, sent a loud message to everybody there: no more putting up with lies and nastiness, not in their circle, not in their clan. I could spot the panic in Emily's eyes as she tried to keep it together, but even she couldn't hide how scared she was of losing her grip. That flawless image she'd polished for years was shredded now, and every frantic look she shot Linda screamed that their scheme was falling apart with no way to fix it. I remembered all those quiet heads-ups and little clues I'd brushed off too long, signs that the life I thought I had was just a big, staged act. Right then, every fib got ripped open, every sneaky dig laid out for a room full of people who used to swoon over their perfect family show. The air in that hall turned heavy with strain as sharp words started flying around. All those bottled-up gripes burst out in a flood of bitter beefs. Every slam and cold shoulder I'd taken over the years weighed on me, but now they weren't just my load, they were ammo against the ones who'd turned my life into a nightmare. The yells bouncing around and chairs scraping the slick floor became the soundtrack of a night that ditched celebration for a big, messy reckoning. My heart was thumping with this mix of mad and free as I watched their homemade kingdom of lies crack apart bit by bit. In that wild swirl of noise, with voices crashing up and down like waves, it hit me: this wreck wasn't the finish line, it was the starting gun. That wedding, all decked out in flash and fake, had turned into a platform for the real deal, a truth that'd rewrite the ties that used to be twisted up in control games and coldness. I took a step back, letting it all roll over me, and gave myself a second to think. I wasn't that guy anymore, suffering quiet in the dark of a phony love. This ugly, public blowout had handed me back a chunk of myself I'd lost in the gloom of shame. Every tear dropping from the eyes of folks who'd toasted to a lie just made my grit tougher. I knew I'd take this mess and build something real, something honest, where I'd never again be just a side note, a name scratched off a list. The night air hummed with the sound of a world falling apart, and in that hum, I caught the whisper of a fresh start, hammered out in the heat of truth. I was sitting solo in my living room's dim glow, still spinning from the wedding's chaos. That day's broken pieces kept pounding in my head like a drum that wouldn't quit. I ran through every sneaky lie and icy brush off, each one stacking up the wall that had grown between us over these long, rough years. As the night got darker, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, and I picked up on Emily's shaky voice on the other end, this mix of mad and desperate I hadn't heard in forever. "Jake, where'd you go?" she asked, her words broken up by this thick quiet that oozed regret and worry. I listened close, every bit of it digging deeper into the old cuts I tried to shrug off. It was wild how the woman I'd trusted with everything could sound so wrecked, so fragile, but I didn't feel sorry for her, not a bit. I'd burned too many nights wondering what I was worth, too many days drifting like a ghost in a life I thought belonged to us. I let that phone ring a few extra times, each missed call a little way of saying I was done. Then she shot me a text, "Please, we gotta talk." A sharp, bitter grin crept over my face. I could still feel all those times I'd begged in silence for something to shift, and it never did. Her sudden itch to chat was way too late, past due for sorries, way past any shot at patching things up. I punched back a reply, slow and on purpose. I walked out like a stranger, "Ain't that what you were after?" Every word was like dropping a stone in the gap that split us now. As the clock ticked on, I drifted back to those years of quiet hurting, long nights stuck asking where I screwed up, all the tiny stabs that piled up till I couldn't pretend they weren't there. Emily was always this perfect front for everybody else, untouchable, while behind our doors, the real state of us was a pile of ruins. That call was her scrambling to grab some control back over a mess that had spun way out of her hands. I could hear that soft, brush-off way she'd talk when we fought, making my worries sound small, my feelings like they didn't count. Right then, it clicked, the woman I'd tied myself to wasn't the one who'd sworn to stick by me through thick and thin. What I saw was the real her, somebody drowning in her own scared head, ready to toss our whole connection just to keep up her high and mighty act. The call fizzled out with nothing settled, just this hanging silence full of stuff we didn't say and hurts that kept on festering. I kept pacing around my little apartment all night, my brain spinning over what Emily's wake-up call really meant. That wasn't her reaching out for forgiveness or begging to start over, it was her finally owning up to the permanent wreck she'd made of us. Alone in that quiet, it all started clicking into place. I'd ended up as roadkill in a tug-of-war over egos, tossed aside for her pride and show. Every second that ticked by, those old jabs and sneaky insults got louder, screaming over any weak dream I had left of a life with her. I leaned into the harsh light that came with figuring it out. Her big, aha, wasn't about fixing us, it was her ducking back into her own little castle, the last play in a game she'd been winning while I was stuck losing. Right then, I knew I couldn't keep being the guy hanging around for a sorry that'd never show up, or try piecing together a busted-up life full of half-lies and promises she'd ditched. In that long, dead quiet night, I made up my mind to grab whatever pride I still had left and carve out a new road, one clear of all those old backstabs. I got that pushing ahead was gonna sting, that the marks she left would stick around as loud reminders of what I'd lost, but I also knew I'd earned a shot at a future where my value didn't hinge on her messed-up heart. So, as the first rays of dawn slipped through my window, I shut the book on that part of my life, leaving behind the shell of a marriage that was never real, and stepped bold into the hope of a clean slate. When I swung the door open, there was Emily on my doorstep, eyes wild and frantic, her fancy dress all messed up from a night of restless wandering. That electric second hit hard, every buried feeling and unsaid word from our rocky marriage came rushing up. She barged right into my place, no invite needed, her shaky voice demanding, "How could you pull this?" That raw, scared question just floated there. I took a good, long look at her, thinking back to all those nights her chilly standoff hit a heart already locked up with pride and secrets. I cocked an eyebrow and shot back, "What about you?" My tone wasn't mocking, just dripping with the bitter realness we'd both lived with forever. Emily froze up, her stance wobbling like our whole messy history was finally too much to hold. "I didn't figure you'd actually walk away," she muttered, so soft it was like the words were wrapped in regret. That one line smashed through the flimsy front she'd kept up, showing a weak spot she'd buried under her perfect, don't care act for years. I eased back a step, letting the quiet stretch out between us, full of sneaky lies, weak apologies, and times I'd cried alone in the dark of our broken vows. The room felt like it was closing in as I went on, keeping my voice low and steady, "Guess you do now." Those plain words, heavy with years of silent hurt, sliced right through the thick air. That moment turned my apartment from a hideout of old hopes into a showdown of truth and regret. I thought about every time I'd felt like a nobody, every little cut that chipped at my pride, and now here I was, no more hiding my pain, ready to face down the woman who'd turned our promises into a joke. Emily's eyes flashed with a mix of fight and sadness, and for a long, heavy minute, we just stared each other down. That silence held everything we'd been through, proof of me hanging on, hopes that never panned out, and love getting choked out slow by her ego. I could see the panic in her, not scared of a fight, but terrified of a life where she wasn't calling all the shots anymore. "You always acted like you were above me," she finally let out, her voice breaking as old grudges boiled up. I shook my head slow, my calm hiding the storm inside. "Never said I was better," I answered. "I just stuck to what's real." Every word I dropped was on purpose, a hard no to letting her twist the past with more lies. Her hand shook as she reached out, like she could still close the gap between us, but it was way too late for that. I sucked in a deep breath, my head racing through old, happy memories that felt like faint whispers now. I walked, 'cause I couldn't fake it anymore, I kept going, steady even with the mess swirling inside. I'd been a stranger to you way before that wedding night. That truth hung there, and for the first time, I caught a glint in her eyes, like she was finally seeing what her coldness cost. In that shaky standoff, all the parts we played for years got stripped down. No space left for her polished front or empty words, just two banged-up souls teetering on the edge of something that couldn't be undone. I held her gaze steady as I wrapped it up. "This ain't about pointing fingers now, Emily. It's about the truth, and I can't live without it anymore." My words settled into the night's stillness, filling the space with the crushing weight of everything we'd lost. That face-off wasn't some yell for a do-over, it was me laying it out clear that our old life was dead. In that heavy, hurting moment, I took back my pride and the dead-sure feeling that it was time to ditch the wreckage of what we'd had. I was sitting there as the soft morning light snuck through the blinds, feeling this odd blend of down and hopeful, staring out at a street already waking up. The last few weeks, packed with hurt, double crosses, and busted-up dreams, had dragged me to this quiet spot, a breather before I jumped into a future I'd thought was out of reach. It hit me that every sharp word, every icy shove-off, every tear I'd let out alone had finally cleared the way for a fresh start, one where I wasn't gonna let old ghosts run my show anymore. My heart used to drag with the load of being ignored and put down, but now it was pumping with this new drive to take my life back. As the rough memories of Emily and her crew faded off, I started thinking about what could be waiting past the ruins of our trashed marriage. I could still hear the gentle warmth in Sarah's voice when she called a few days after the wedding mess, real sorry and care that actually made me feel noticed after years of nothing. Her simple, "my bad," and talk of a clean slate kicked up something in me, a little hope that maybe not everybody was stuck on being cruel and fake. Right then, I decided I wasn't letting that bitter past keep calling my shots. I'd wear every scar like a badge, proof I'd made it through more than I ever figured I could, still strong enough to build something new. Every morning, getting ready for a day that was all mine, I found peace in little habits that locked in my new freedom. I'd kick off the day with a quiet, "Thanks for the redo," stepping out into the crisp air with a heart that wasn't weighed down by old cuts anymore. I'd stroll the streets slow, soaking up the free feeling in every step. The world used to look all gray and hopeless, but now it was popping with little hints of color and possibility. I started catching the laughs of people I didn't know, the soft rustle of trees in a light wind, and the low hum of life picking back up after the chaos storm had blown through. Alone in my place, I figured out how strong it is to think things over and take care of myself. I loaded my days with small, good stuff for me, a slow coffee in the early quiet, a park walk, flipping through a book that gave me some comfort and smarts. Each one was my way of saying I was bigger than all the crap I'd been through. I started jotting down my thoughts, scribbling out the trip from being a guy who'd turned into a stranger in his own world to someone clawing back every shred of his pride. That soft scratch of pen on paper gave me a voice that was all mine, untouched by the mean streak that used to try to pin me down. I hit up some old buddies, folks who'd been pushed to the edges of my life, and got back in touch with real, straight-up talks. Their support, so honest and easy, hit me with the fact I wasn't riding this road solo. Those deep, real chats showed me a tomorrow built on just being true, not on big moves or fancy schemes. Day by day, I picked up the bits of my soul and started patching together a life that gave a nod to my old fights and my dreams ahead. I found some peace knowing every tough break taught me something, every tear pushed me tougher. I got it now, kicking off fresh wasn't losing, it was a shout out to guts, the kind it takes to ditch a life that didn't fit and grab one shaped by my own calls. Standing where the past met the maybe, this warm little glow fired up in my chest, like hope was flicking the lights back on for me. I stared at the sun climbing up and mumbled a promise to myself, I'd tackle each day with purpose, kindness, and a rock-solid respect for the guy I was turning into. In that gentle morning shine, I shook off the dark of what was, set on building a future where my value came straight from the love and realness I held inside. So, with a heart locked steady and no regrets clouding my head, I grabbed onto the fact that a new start wasn't just doable, it was already rolling out right in front of me, one quiet beat at a time. After that long, brutal scrap for my spirit, I walked out of the courthouse feeling a calm I'd never tasted before. Each step on that cool pavement carried the weight of busted promises and silent pain, but every thump lifted a load off my back. I'd watched my life get whittled down to sneaky put-downs and hollow moves, and now I was breaking away from a past that tried to own me. I thought back to those endless nights alone, where every tear scratched more truth into me and every harsh word made me wonder who I even was. I wasn't about to let the nastiness of people I once called family tell me who I am anymore. I'd turned into an outsider in a life that was never mine, and in that rough split, I dug up the strength to wave goodbye. The courthouse doors clicked shut as I tilted my head up to a sky brushed with dusk's soft light. I could still feel the bite of every cruel jab and cold shove I'd taken, but in that deep, still moment, I saw the hurt had shifted into this quiet strength, a vow of freedom that was all my own. I moved slow and steady, catching every sound, the far-off hum of cars, the wind whispering through bare branches, my heart thumping solid, each one telling me I was still kicking and ready to grab a future I'd shape myself. Every stride was me thumbing my nose at a past that tried to tie me down with fake love and expectations. I remembered how they'd brushed me off at family get-togethers, how a smirk or a quick look would shut me up. Now, the evening's hush said it all, like everything paused to mark the end of one story and the start of something hopeful. I felt life pulsing in that cold air, every breath was proof I was more than my old hurts. The road rolled out ahead, long and unknown, calling me to ditch the wreckage of a marriage built on lies and control. I'd learned real toughness isn't hanging on to what used to be, it's having the nerve to face a tomorrow I can't predict. I took some comfort in just being free at last, free to rebuild, to cut myself some slack, and to find the guy I'd buried under years of being ignored and beat down. Those rough patches that used to drag me under were now steps lifting me toward something new. I pictured the faces from that day, the hard looks of folks who'd seen a slick lie fall apart, and the faint sparks of kindness in eyes that used to skip right over me. Right then, I knew walking off wasn't giving up, it was me standing up for myself. I'd picked climbing over the poison of bitter words and the sting of betrayal, choosing to stand tall heading into a new day. The evening's soft hum wrapped me up like a cozy throw, promising every finish carried the start of something fresh. Sure, the path ahead was fuzzy, but I jumped in with an open heart and a steady grip. I knew there'd be rough days, times when old shadows tried to murmur doubts, but with every step, I swore I wouldn't let yesterday's cuts shape tomorrow's shot. As I kept going on my lone trek, the city lights twinkled far off like little signs of hope, and deep down, I felt my worth wasn't tied to the ones who put me down anymore. I was free to write my own tale, to craft a future where my strength and pride outshone any mean memory. With solid grit and a heart ready for what's next, I walked off, head high, leaving a past that tried to crush me and stepping bold into a new beginning's promise. Thanks for joining us on Top Stories Hub. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.